Namaskar. A warm welcome to World News and Indian Perspective on All India Radio. This is Saira Mujtaba, bringing glimpses of the major developments of the day from across the globe. Over the next half an hour, we shall bring you the latest from the world of politics, economy, sports, entertainment and more. The headlines. Effects of Russia-Ukraine conflict on fuel, food and fertilizers are a growing concern for Global South, says India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar. South Korea and United States discuss nuclear exercises as tensions with North Korea escalate. Venezuela and Colombia open key binational bridge as ties warm up. In Philippines, power outage at Manila Airport disrupts travel for thousands of people. 14 killed in armed attack on a prison in Mexico. Dozens of inmates escape. 2 helicopters collide mid-air in Australia. 4 killed. And in under-19 women's cricket, India beat South Africa by 4 wickets in 4th T20 at Pretoria. And now the news in detail. External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar said on Monday that Prime Minister Narendra Modi has been in contact with the leaders of Russia and Ukraine, pressing them to return to dialogue and diplomacy as a prolonged conflict will not serve the interests of any party. Dr. Jaishankar made the remarks while delivering a joint press statement after holding talks with his Austrian counterpart Alexander Schallenberg in Vienna. The External Affairs Minister reached Austria from Cyprus on the second leg of his two-nation tour. Dr. S. Jaishankar said there is a growing concern for the Global South about the knock-on effects of the conflict in terms of accessibility and affordability of fuel, food and fertilizers.
With regard to the Ukraine conflict, let me underline that India remains deeply concerned. We sincerely believe that this is not the era of war. Differences must be settled on the negotiating table. It is imperative that there is a return to dialogue and diplomacy. Prolonged conflict will not serve the interests of any party. My Prime Minister has been in contact with the leaders of both nations, pressing our point of view in that regard.
Dr. Jaishankar said during his talks with his Austrian counterpart, they spoke on the threats to international peace and security that are posed by terrorism, including its cross-border practices, violent extremism, radicalization and fundamentalism. He said their effects cannot be contained within a region, especially when they are deeply connected to narcotics and illegal weapons trade and other forms of international crime. He said since the epicenter is located so close to India, naturally its experiences and insights are useful to others. The minister said during his visit, India and Austria concluded a number of agreements. He said a particularly noteworthy one is the Comprehensive Migration and Mobility Partnership Agreement, as it will enable demands for skills and talents to be synchronized with their availability. Dr. Jaishankar said Austria is an important partner for India in the European Union at a time when it seeks to upgrade its relationship. He said New Delhi appreciates its strong support for the negotiations underway on the Free Trade Agreement, the Investment Agreement and the Geographical Indicators Agreement. He said their conclusion will obviously have a positive impact on the bilateral economic partnership.
We view Austria as a serious and consequential partner when it comes to bilateral cooperation. You have experiences and capabilities that are relevant to India's modernization and progress. These are guided by government policies but ultimately implemented through business transactions. Our commitment today is to take both aspects forward in tandem. We have currently trade turnover of approximately $2.5 billion. More than 150 Austrian companies are present in India. We would like those numbers also to grow more substantially.
In today's Hotspot section, we bring you a news commentary, Resilience of the Indian Economy.
India's economy has demonstrated resilience despite a challenging external environment, says the World Bank in its latest India Development Update, a World Bank flagship publication. The report, titled Navigating the Storm, finds that while the deteriorating external environment will weigh on India's growth prospects, the economy is relatively well positioned to weather global spillovers compared to most other emerging markets. Impact of a tightening global monetary policy cycle, slowing global growth and elevated commodity prices will mean that the Indian economy will experience lower growth in 2022-23 financial year compared to 2021-22. Despite these challenges, the update expects India to register a strong GDP growth and remain one of the fastest growing major economies in the world due to robust domestic demand. The World Bank has revised its 2022-23 GDP forecast upwards to 6.9% from 6.5% in October 2022, considering a strong outturn in India in the second quarter, July to September, of the 2022-23 financial year. The Reserve Bank of India has observed that India's GDP for 2022-23 is likely to be 6.8%. India's economy has been remarkably resilient to the deteriorating external environment, and strong macroeconomic fundamentals have placed it in good stead compared to other emerging market economies, the World Bank has observed. India's economy is relatively insulated from global spillovers compared to other emerging markets. This is partly because India has a large domestic market and is relatively less exposed to international trade flows. The report finds that while a 1 percentage point decline in growth in the US is associated with a 0.4 percentage points decline in India's growth, the effect is around 1.5 times larger for other emerging economies. Analysis for growth spillovers from the EU and China also yields similar results. India's external position has also improved considerably over the past decade. The current account deficit is adequately financed by improving foreign direct investment inflows and a solid cushion of foreign exchange reserves. India has one of the largest holdings of international reserves in the world. Policy reforms and prudent regulatory measures have also played a key role in developing resilience in the economy. Increased reliance on market borrowings has improved the transparency and credibility of fiscal policy, and the government has diversified the investor base for government securities. The introduction of a formal inflation targeting framework during the past decade was an important step in lending credibility to monetary policy decisions. The report notes that both levers of macroeconomic policy, fiscal and monetary, have played a role in managing the challenges that have emerged over the past year. The Reserve Bank of India, in its latest Monetary Policy Committee review, maintained that on the domestic front, real gross domestic product increased by 6.3% year-on-year. In the third quarter of the current fiscal, economic activity is exhibiting resilience. In the agricultural sector, a pickup in Rabi sowing, 6.4% higher than a year ago. It is supported by the good progress of the northeast monsoon and above average reservoir levels. Activity in the industry and services sectors is in expansion mode, as reflected in purchasing managers' indices and other high-frequency indicators. Aggregate demand conditions have been supported by pent-up spending and discretionary expenditures during the festival season, although their evolution is somewhat uneven across sectors. Urban demand has remained buoyant and rural demand is recovering. Investment activity is in modest expansion. Merchandise exports contracted in October after an expansion for 19 consecutive months. Growth in non-oil, non-gold imports decelerated. Overall liquidity remains in surplus, with average daily absorption under the Liquidity Adjustment Facility at 1.4 lakh crore rupees during October to November, as compared with 2.2 lakh crore rupees in August to September. On a year-on-year basis, money supply expanded by 8.9% as on November 18, 2022, while bank credit rose by 17.2%. India's foreign exchange reserves were placed at more than $560 billion in December 2022.
Moving on, India has asked Pakistan to release and repatriate 631 Indian fishermen and 2 civilian prisoners who have completed their jail term and whose nationality has been confirmed. In addition, Islamabad has also been urged to provide immediate consular access to the remaining 30 fishermen and 22 civilian prisoners who have been in Pakistan's custody and are believed to be Indian. The Ministry of External Affairs, MEA, said India made the request in the context of the exchange of the list of civilian prisoners and fishermen by both the countries as part of a practice to do so on 1st January and 1st July of every calendar year under the framework of a 2008 pact. The MEA said Pakistan has been requested to ensure the safety, security and welfare of all Indian and believed to be Indian civilian prisoners and fishermen pending their release and repatriation to India. The MEA said India shared lists of 339 Pakistani civilian prisoners and 95 Pakistani fishermen currently in Indian custody. India and Pakistan yesterday exchanged through diplomatic channels simultaneously at New Delhi and Islamabad the lists of civilian prisoners and fishermen in their custody. It said the government has called for early release and repatriation of civilian prisoners, missing Indian defence personnel and fishermen along with their boats from Pakistan's custody. This is All India Radio giving you the world news. Welcome back. South Korea and the United States are planning joint exercises involving American nuclear assets. South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol stated this in an interview with the National Daily. Mr. Yoon's statement about South Korea's plan for joint nuclear exercises with the US comes amid North Korea's attempt to intensify its missile testing program and expand its nuclear arsenal. South Korean President said the joint exercises will aim to ensure more effective implementation of the US extended deterrence and improve the US military's ability to deter a possible attack by North Korea or its sponsor, China. Mr. Yoon said nuclear weapons belong to America, but planning, information sharing, exercises and training should be conducted collaboratively by South Korea and the US. Earlier, North Korea's ruler Kim Jong-un stated that his country plans to develop new intercontinental ballistic missiles and expand its nuclear arsenal to counter the US. Colombia and Venezuela have opened a key bridge linking the countries that had been closed for almost 7 years amid political tensions, launching an era of improved relations between the two countries. Delegations led by Colombian Trade Minister German Humana and the governor of Venezuela's Táchira state, Freddy Bernal, met in the middle of the bridge linking Táchira and Colombia's Norte de Santander state for the opening ceremony. Construction of the bridge ended in 2016, but it was never inaugurated because of the political crisis between the South American countries. The bridge, which cost more than $32 million to build, was designed to ease congestion on the two other binational bridges in the area and facilitate trade. In 2019, Venezuela's socialist president Nicolas Maduro ordered more than a dozen cargo containers placed on the bridge to symbolically block it to protest attempts by the opposition to bring humanitarian aid into Venezuela from Colombia. Diplomatic and commercial relations between Colombia and Venezuela were re-established in September following the inauguration of Gustavo Petro, a former guerrilla, as Colombia's president. In Mexico, at least 10 guards and 4 inmates were killed in an armed attack at a prison in a northern border town, Juarez, on Sunday. Authorities said additionally nearly 24 inmates escaped and 13 others were injured following the chaos that erupted. At least 2 more people were killed following armed aggression elsewhere in the city. According to reports, the jailbreak was triggered when gunmen in armored vehicles opened fire and attacked a state prison in Ciudad Juarez. In Australia, a mid-air collision between 2 helicopters near a popular tourist attraction in Gold Coast region on Monday left 4 people dead while 3 others were critically injured. Talking to reporters, Queensland police said the incident took place near the SeaWorld theme park. Initial reports said 1 helicopter had been taking off and the other was landing when they collided. Queensland Ambulance Service said a total of 13 people were on the chopper. Photos from the site showed debris strewn on the land with several personnel and vessels in the waters. The Australian Transport Safety Bureau has launched an investigation into the accident. In the Philippines, authorities halted flights in and out of Manila on New Year's Day due to a malfunction of air traffic control, which also prevented airlines bound to other destinations from using the country's airspace. This led to a disruption of nearly 300 flights and left tens of thousands of travelers stranded in the Southeast Asian hub. Ninoy Aquino International Airport, NAIA, is the main gateway for travelers to the Philippines, serving the capital Manila and the surrounding region. Transportation Secretary Jaime Bautista apologized for the inconvenience to passengers. He said the outdated existing facility should be upgraded immediately and a backup system was also needed. The airport authorities scrambled to resume full services on Monday. It said the airport was handling a maximum of 15 flights per hour on Monday morning, down from the usual 20. Several of the airport's 4 terminals were crowded, with long queues of people trying to rebook flights, while other weary passengers slept on chairs or on the floor. The death toll in the massive floods that devastated parts of the Philippines over the Christmas weekend has climbed to 51. The National Disaster Response Agency said on Monday that 19 people are missing as affected residents struggle to get back on their feet. Photos on social media showed residents in Misamis Occidental Province in northern Mindanao sweeping away thick mud from the floors of their homes. In the seaside village of Cabol Anonan, coconut trees were uprooted and huts made of light material were nearly flattened. The northern Mindanao region in the south bore the brunt of the disaster, reporting 25 deaths. Most of the deaths were from drowning and landslides, and among the missing were fishermen whose boats capsized. Floods have subsided in most of the areas hit by bad weather that disrupted Christmas celebrations in the eastern, central, and southern Philippines. But over 8,600 of the nearly 600,000 affected people remain in emergency shelters. Over 4,500 houses were damaged by the floods, along with roads and bridges, and some areas still have disrupted power and water supply, the Disaster Management Agency said. The government sent food and other essentials to flood-hit residents, deployed heavy equipment for clearing operations, and provided iron sheets and shelter repair kits, officials said. Teams from the capital Manila were sent to assist communities with limited clean water in setting up water filtration systems. At least 22 cities and municipalities have declared a state of calamity, the Disaster Management Council said. The move will allow the release of emergency funds and hasten rehabilitation efforts. Governor of Central Bank of Sri Lanka, Nandalal Veerasinghe, has said that steps will be taken this year to reduce key interest rates. Mr. Veerasinghe said that Sri Lanka's inflation rate eased to 57.2% in December from 61% in November. He said that inflation is expected to reduce further in 2023. High interest rates have kept inflation down, but the rates will be reduced as the economy stabilizes, he said. Sri Lanka Central Bank in November 2022 decided to maintain the key lending rate at 15.5%. Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva has been sworn in as the 39th President of Brazil. 77-year-old Lula narrowly defeated Jair Bolsonaro in a general election held in October last year to win an unprecedented third presidential term after a hiatus that saw him spend a year and a half behind bars on corruption convictions that were later overturned. In his previous years as Workers' Party PT president from 2003 to 2010, the former union leader lifted millions of Brazilians from poverty during a commodity boom that boosted the economy. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi has congratulated Lula da Silva on assuming office as the President of Brazil. In a tweet, Mr. Modi wished him a successful third term and said he looks forward to working with him to strengthen India-Brazil strategic partnership. The 108th Indian Science Conference ISC will begin tomorrow at Nagpur in Maharashtra. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi will address the event on Tuesday through video conferencing. The focal theme of the 5-day event is Science and Technology for Sustainable Development with Women Empowerment. It will witness discussions on issues of sustainable development, women empowerment, and the role of science and technology. The participants will discuss and deliberate on ways to increase the number of women in higher echelons of teaching, research, and industry, along with trying to find ways to provide women with equal access to science, technology, engineering, mathematics education, and economic participation. A special program to showcase the contribution of women in science and technology will also be held, which will also witness lectures by renowned women scientists. Several other programs will also be organized alongside ISC. Prime Minister of India Narendra Modi has underlined the need for widening the scope of research on modern Indian history to create better awareness among people about India's past. Mr. Modi on Monday presided over the annual general meeting of the Nehru Memorial Museum and Library Society in his capacity as the President of the Society in New Delhi. He also emphasized the need for institutions in the country in general to create their well-audited and researched recorded memory for the benefit of the present as well as future generations. On account of the upcoming 200th birth anniversary of Swami Dayanand Saraswati, the Prime Minister called upon academic and cultural institutions to produce research about his contributions as well as about the Arya Samaj, which is going to complete 150 years of its existence in 2025. 3 Indian American Democrats have taken oath as Fort Bend County judges in the United States. In a ceremony on Sunday, Julie A. Matthew, K.P. George, and Surendra K. Patel were sworn in as Fort Bend County judges, along with other newly elected and re-elected officials. Julie Matthew, the first Indian American woman to be elected to a judge's bench in the U.S. 4 years ago, was re-elected for a second term after defeating her Republican challenger Andrew Dornberg. Matthew, a native of Tiruvalla in Kerala, was sworn in via video conferencing and will continue to serve as presiding judge for a period of 4 years. She was voted the administrative judge for the county courts by her peers and also heads the first juvenile intervention and mental health court. George, the first Indian American to hold an office in Fort Bend County, won a second term as the county's judge in a narrow race in the November elections. The Sensex and Nifty on Monday closed with gains. We have a report.
The Sensex rose 327 points to finish at 61,168. The Nifty also gained 92 points to settle at 18,197. Among the global stock markets, Asian markets remained closed due to extended New Year holidays, except South Korea's Kospi, which fell 0.5%. European shares were up in the intraday trade. Crude oil prices rose around 3%. The crude prices traded higher as the markets is hoping that the relaxation of COVID-related restrictions in China would boost demand for the commodity. Investors also remain concerned about supply constraints amid continued Russia-Ukraine tensions in the year 2023. In the intraday trade, Brent crude was trading at $85.90 per barrel. Back home at the multi-commodity exchange, gold futures for February was trading at 55,175 rupees per 10 grams. Silver futures for March was trading at 69,615 rupees per kilogram when reports last came in. Nishit Kumar for World News, All India Radio.
On to sports now. In under-19 women's cricket, India defeated South Africa by 4 wickets in the 4th T20 of 5-match series in Pretoria. Opting to bat first, the hosts posted 86 of 9 in stipulated 20 overs. In reply, India overhauled the target with the loss of 6 wickets in 14.4 overs. Indian women are now leading the series 2-0. Indian Eves won the first match by 54 runs, while the next 2 matches were abandoned due to rain. Brazilians are paying their last respects to football giant Pelé starting Monday with a 24-hour public wake at the stadium of his long-time team, Santos. The oceanside home of the team is expecting a huge influx of fans looking to honor the king of football, who died on Thursday at the age of 82 after a long battle with cancer. The coffin, bearing the remains of the legendary player who has won 3 World Cups, is being displayed in the center of the field. Known as Villa Belmiro after the neighborhood where it is located, the stadium has a capacity of 16,000 people. On Tuesday, a funeral procession will then carry Pellé's coffin through the streets of the city of Santos. The procession will continue till final resting place of the football icon, the Memorial Necropole Ecumenista Cemetery, where a private funeral will be held for family members. President of India, Draupadi Murmu, will confer Pravasi Bharatiya Samman Awards on 27 people during the Pravasi Bharatiya Divas Convention at Indore in Madhya Pradesh. The 17th edition of the Pravasi Bharatiya Divas Convention is scheduled to be held from the 8th to the 10th of January this year. The Pravasi Bharatiya Samman Award is the highest honor conferred on overseas Indians. It is conferred as part of the Pravasi Bharatiya Divas Convention on non-resident Indians, persons of Indian origin, or an organization established and run by the non-resident Indians in recognition of their outstanding achievements both in India and abroad. A jury-cum-awards committee with Vice President of India as the chairman and External Affairs Minister as the vice chair and other distinguished members from various walks of life considered the nominations for the Pravasi Bharatiya Samman Awards 2023 and unanimously selected the awardees. And now let's take a look at the major developments around the world as reported in the foreign press. The Straits Times writes Manila Airport scrambles to restore normalcy after power cut, about 65,000 passengers affected. The Straits Times also writes global economy faces tougher year in 2023. IMF head Georgieva warns. The Global Times writes Chinese people embrace 2023 with hope, confidence and strength. The Guardian writes this nightmare is over. Lula vows to pull Brazil out of Bolsonaro's era of devastation. The Business Recorder reports death toll from Philippine floods, landslides rises to 51. Wall Street Journal writes Canada's ruling party faces pushback on gun control legislation. And the Washington Post writes helicopter collision near Australia's SeaWorld Park kills 4, injures 8. The New York Times writes in Bucha, a final rampage served as a coda to a month of atrocities. CNN writes Ukraine claims hundreds of Russian troops killed in strike. Moscow says 63 died. And now a quick look at the headlines once again. Effects of Russia-Ukraine conflict on fuel, food and fertilizers are a growing concern for Global South, says India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar. South Korea and US discuss nuclear exercises as tensions with North Korea escalate. Venezuela and Colombia open key bi-national bridge as ties warm up. In Philippines, power outage at Manila Airport disrupts travel for thousands of people. 14 killed in armed attack on a prison in Mexico. Dozens of inmates escape. 2 helicopters collide mid-air in Australia. 4 killed. And in under-19 women's cricket, India beat South Africa by 4 wickets in 4th T20 at Pretoria. And now before we end, let us listen to Mahatma Gandhi's favorite bhajan, Vaishnav Jan, by artists from Haiti.
Sakala loka ma saune bande nina nakare kenire bachka man nichala rake ghana ghana chanani tenire Vaishnav jana ko tere kahiye je pire paragi
And with that, we end this bulletin. We'll be back at the same time tomorrow with the next edition of World News.